The film opens in a tulip field in Holland, Michigan, where Nancy Vandero searches her room for missing earrings but comes up empty. Suspecting her babysitter Candy, she questions her, only for Candy to apologize. Not for the earrings, but for eating the bacon, which frustrates Nancy even more. Nancy tells Candy to take a few days off until she admits the truth. Her son Harry is furious, swearing at her before quickly calling his father, Fred, an optometrist, to report what happened. Fred assures Harry he'll chat with him once he gets home. When he arrives, he praises his wife's cooking before retreating to his favorite room, where he indulges in his hobby, building a flawless miniature version of Holland, Michigan. He tells Harry to just apologize to his mother, promising that all will be fine. At dinner, Nancy mentions her missing earrings again, and Fred casually suggests checking the junk drawer, which makes her realize she hadn't considered that. Harry apologizes for swearing at her, and Fred mentions he's heading to a conference in Frankenmuth tomorrow. The next day, Nancy, a teacher at Holland High School, goes to her life management class. Afterward, she meets her colleague Dave, the shop teacher, and vents about her missing earrings, also noting that her husband seems to be going on conferences more frequently. Dave then mentions he has an eye exam with Fred scheduled for later that week. Nancy flirts with Dave, teasing that he'd probably look good in glasses. Later, she goes to pick up Harry, who asks if he can have a sleepover with a friend, and she agrees. At home, Nancy enjoys some food and watches TV before deciding to call her husband's hotel. The receptionist informs her that Fred hasn't answered. Thanking her, Nancy ends the call and, with nothing else to do, resumes searching for her missing earrings. This leads her into Fred's private room, where, while inspecting his miniature Holland, Michigan, she notices a box on the floor. Inside are empty Polaroid film boxes. She quietly returns everything to its place. The next day, while getting ready to do laundry, Nancy finds parking tickets from Madison in Fred's pants and quickly hides them. When Fred comes in to greet her, she mentions calling his hotel, and he explains he must have been in the shower and missed the call. At school, Nancy confides in Dave, sharing her suspicion that Fred might be cheating. She notes he never mentioned a conference in Madison and speculates that he uses Polaroid cameras to avoid leaving a digital trace when photographing his lovers. She begins to suspect that these so-called conferences are just a cover for his secret rendezvous. Since Nancy trusts Dave, she confides that she always felt out of place until Fred came along and encouraged her to move to Holland, which she now sees as a blessing. That night, Fred announces another conference, this time in Greenville. Fed up with his constant lies, Nancy openly shows her frustration and retreats to her room. Shortly after, Fred follows and asks what's wrong. Struggling to explain, she simply admits she doesn't know. He offers comfort, and they manage to reconcile. In the middle of the night, Nancy has a nightmare where she sees her son, who suddenly vanishes. She continues walking, only to sink deeper into water, and wakes up with a start, realizing it was just a dream. The next day, after class, Nancy meets Dave at a restaurant. She suggests breaking into Fred's office, reasoning that since she couldn't find the Polaroids at home, they must be hidden there. She proposes that during his eye exam, Dave sneak to the bathroom and leave the window slightly open so they can break in later. Dave feels nervous about getting caught, but Nancy reassures him that everything will be fine. That evening, Nancy tells Fred she plans to see a show with her friend Gwen the next day, and he simply replies, "All right." The following day, Dave goes to his eye exam. While examining him, Fred casually mentions that Dave's insurance is covered by Holland High School and asks if he knows Nancy, his wife, who works there. Dave lies, saying he doesn't. After the exam, Dave excuses himself to the bathroom and tries to insert the window stopper, but it falls out, so he quickly improvises one using toilet paper. Meanwhile, someone starts pounding on the door. It's a police officer. Panicked, Dave runs, but the officer just wants to return the jacket he left behind. Later, Nancy meets Dave in his car. He tells her he can't go through with the plan, explaining he nearly got caught. To avoid disappointing her, he lies that he has a date that night. Nancy, visibly disappointed, makes him feel guilty. Dave then admits the truth, confessing he didn't want her to see him as a coward. Reassured that she doesn't, they share a kiss, and Dave finally agrees to continue with their plan. That night, they break into Fred's office. Dave lifts Nancy up, letting her slip inside through the window. Meanwhile, Fred and Harry are having dinner when Fred receives a call from Gwen, who says her son has an eye infection from his contact lenses and asks if he can see him tonight. Fred agrees. Back in the office, Nancy searches thoroughly, finding some credit cards and quickly noting down the numbers. She then discovers an album filled with house photos and a picture of a woman. Just as she flips through it, Dave calls, urging her to abort the mission. She quickly climbs back out the window, and later she and Dave make love. After examining Gwen's son, Fred casually asks about the show, but Gwen looks puzzled, saying she and Nancy never planned anything like that. Suspicious, Fred says goodbye and heads to his office, where he finds a small hook from Nancy's bracelet on the floor. Meanwhile, Nancy is startled when an egg is thrown at Dave's window. It's a student, accompanied by the boy's furious father, upset that Dave called Child Protective Services over suspected abuse. After handling the situation, Dave breaks down, confessing he feels a woman like Nancy would never truly choose someone like him. He insists she values status, respectability, and a big house. Feeling defeated, he kicks her out. The next day, Nancy, still determined, calls the credit card company to check recent transactions and discovers $300 was spent at Jansen's jewelry shop. After ending the call, she spots her missing earring inside a jar. Entering her bedroom, Nancy discovers a jewelry box holding a matching set of earrings. Fred reveals that he knew she had been in his office and that he was aware Nancy and Gwen hadn't planned to see a show since Gwen had been at the hospital. He also mentions finding her bracelet hook. Instead of getting angry, Fred suggests they hit the reset button and start over, and Nancy agrees. As Holland prepares for tulip time, both children and adults ready themselves for the traditional Dutch dance. That night, after another uninspired experience in bed with her husband, Nancy's thoughts drift back to Dave, realizing she isn't truly living, just existing. She calls Dave, telling him she wants to divorce Fred and be with him. Dave warns her that Fred is a respected man in their small town, and if they expose him now, the entire community will turn against them. Nancy insists she doesn't care. Dave then suggests they catch Fred in the act to gain the upper hand, and reluctantly, Nancy agrees. The next day, after dropping Fred off at the station for his conference in Greenville, Nancy asks her friend Gwen to watch Harry under the pretense of a hospital checkup. She and Dave then follow Fred, observing him make multiple stops to buy various items, until they finally see him enter a hotel. Nancy suggests that Dave find out the room number while she will obtain the key, claiming to be Fred's wife. After discovering the room number, Dave texts Nancy. She takes the elevator while Dave follows Fred into a hotel bar. Inside the room, Nancy finds a cufflink, dog treats, and lingerie. As she snaps a photo of the items, Dave calls, warning her to hide immediately. She narrowly escapes before Fred enters. Later, Nancy excitedly shows Dave the photo, and they share a passionate kiss. For the first time, Nancy feels truly exhilarated. However, Dave reminds her they need more solid proof, something concrete, like actually catching Fred in the act. They decide to split up. Nancy heads home while Dave continues tailing Fred. At home, Nancy goes to Fred's model room and examines it with a magnifying glass. She spots the name Lacey Ann on one of the houses and searches it online. Calling the number she finds, she learns about a woman known as the Bologna Queen, who went missing 3 years ago and whose body was later discovered. Digging deeper, Nancy combs through Fred's architectural designs and finds a series of pin codes written on the back. Cross-referencing the pin codes with the parking tickets she found in Fred's pocket, Nancy realizes they match. Determined to uncover the truth, she goes to the library and researches all the missing and murder cases in those 5 areas. The reports reveal multiple women who were all reported dead or missing. Meanwhile, Dave observes Fred flirting with a woman.
Feeling uneasy, Dave follows them into the woman's house, leaving his phone behind. Inside, he stumbles upon a horrifying scene, Fred attempting to kill her. A struggle erupts, and Dave barely escapes with his life. As Fred catches his breath, he coldly remarks that Dave did know his wife. Dave runs toward a nearby lake, but before Fred can attack again, he fights back and pushes Fred into the water. Shocked at his own actions, Fred realizes he must eliminate all evidence linking him to his crimes.
Later, Dave meets Nancy at her house, telling her that Fred is a murderer, but reassuring her that she's safe. He lies, claiming he confronted Fred, who supposedly agreed to flee after Dave promised not to go to the police. Dave suggests they leave town, but Nancy refuses, insisting they can't just disappear. Tulip time is coming. She promises they will leave after the festival. The following week passes in a blur for Nancy, while Dave is plagued by nightmares of Fred's face and the dogs. Finally, tulip time arrives. Nancy greets her friends, but her heart nearly stops when Gwen casually mentions seeing Fred earlier. Panic sets in when Nancy turns and thinks she sees Fred, but it's only Dave. After watching her son finish his Dutch dance performance, she searches for Dave and finds him holding a gun. He tells her he saw Fred, but when he went after him, he had vanished. Fearing for her son's safety, Nancy rushes him home. Later, there's a knock at the door. Nancy warns Harry to stay inside. When she answers, Dave steps forward and reveals he killed Fred. He insists they go to the police and confess, but Nancy refuses. In the heated struggle that follows, they fight, and Dave accidentally hits his head, causing it to bleed. Shaken, Nancy tells Dave to stay put while she goes to get help. Before she can leave, she realizes her son is missing and frantically searches for him, only to find him with Fred. Fred glares at her, scolding her for tarnishing their family name. Coldly, he explains that the killer in him is separate from the man she married, just as her affair with Dave was separate from their marriage. He then suggests they reset everything, just as they always do. Once inside the car, Fred acts as if nothing happened, driving like they're just another normal couple. Nancy, fed up with his delusions, demands he stop and tells her son to run. A violent struggle ensues between her and Fred, and in the end, she manages to injure him, leaving both of them shaken. She gathers her son and returns home, only to find Dave gone. Now she's left questioning everything. Was Dave ever real, or just a figment of her imagination all along? The uncertainty gnaws at her as she tries to process the shocking events of the night.